8-team playoff versus 12-team playoff. It's soon to be college football's biggest debate. Guys, with the SEC expanding, adding Oklahoma and Texas, we all know that the college football playoff will be expanding. It has to. The SEC is simply too powerful. We need to either expand it to 8 teams or 12 teams. So I'm going to be looking at pros and cons of expanding. Should we do the 8 teams? Should we go all the way to 12? This is just a quick presentation showing you some of the pros and cons of the 8-team playoff versus the 12-team playoff. Let's get into it right here. We've got the 8-team and we've got the 12-team. Looking at the 8-team playoff first, you go from 4 to 8. You keep a level of exclusivity. Meaning, you go to 12 teams, people are worried a lot of teams are going to get into the playoff. 3-loss SEC teams with their new conference and how good it is. You could go through a schedule in the SEC once Texas and Oklahoma join it, where you face Oklahoma, you face Alabama, you face Georgia. There's going to be a lot of really good 3 or 4-loss SEC teams. You go to a 12-team playoff, one of those 3 or 4-loss teams may get in the playoffs. So you go from the 4 to the 8 teams, you keep a level of exclusiveness to it, to where it's a really, hard goal still. Obviously right now with it being a 4-team playoff, we know we have to expand it to an 8-team playoff. The same 4 or 5 teams were making it every year. The talent pool was shrinking. All the top recruits were going to those schools. They're going to Ohio State. They're going to Clemson. They're going to Alabama. They're going to Georgia. They're going to LSU. They're going to Oklahoma. That's why we know we need to expand it. Not just that, obviously, we know the SEC's become so strong, you have to expand it. That conference is so much better than all the other conferences. It becomes tough to weigh a 2 or 3-loss SEC team against a 1-loss Big Ten team. But you keep a level of exclusiveness to it if you are an 8-team, to where it's still really hard to get in, even if you go from 4 to 8. Another pro of an 8-team playoff, only one more game. So this is a big thing. You go to the 12-team playoff, you're jumbling schedules. Are you taking away a conference game? Are you taking away a non-conference game? You're going to have to do something, because some teams will play an additional 2 games if it is a 12-team playoff. The 8-team playoff, you really only have to add 1 game. It's not that big of a deal, and it's just a little bit easier, only 1 more game. Another pro of an 8-team playoff, it's a small jump, right? Going from 4 to 8, we all know human beings don't like change, right? You hear about, an 8-team playoff, a 12-team playoff, you're like, oh, that's stupid. We don't want it to be March Madness. But it's a smaller jump, right? We're not going from 4 to 12. We're going from 4 to 8. That's why my prediction is actually we have a little stepping stone where we go from 4 teams to 8 teams for about 2 years, and then we go to 12 teams permanently. That's my prediction on that. But again, this is just a small jump here if we go from 4 to 8. Not a big thing. You're not going straight from 4 to 12, which would be a major jump. You kind of just, it's only doubling the teams, and it's still only 8 teams. It's really not that much. Let's move to the 12-team playoff. Some advantages for the 12-team playoff. Less SEC dominance. So I think this is going to be a big problem if we only expand it to an 8-team playoff. I think you're going to see 3, maybe 4 SEC teams once Oklahoma and Texas join the SEC, possibly getting into the playoff. You look at the SEC, or the new SEC, with the full 16 teams, you've got 3 full-on powerhouses in Oklahoma, Alabama, and Georgia, and then you've got teams like LSU, you've got teams like Florida that can go on a run at any year. They've got the talent to do it. It is such a loaded conference that you may, if you just go to an 8-team playoff, you may see 3 or 4 SEC teams take up that 8-team playoff, and then you say, well, if you go to a 12-team, what about 5 or 6? I don't think that's going to happen. I think if we go to a 12-team playoff, it would still be just around 3 or 4 SEC teams, because they're all going to be beating each other, remember that, and you could only have maybe an SEC dominance at around 33%. Maybe they get 4 out of the 12 teams in. I'm just concerned about the 8-team playoff, about 4 out of the 8 teams being from the SEC. That's what I'm concerned about if we just expand to an 8-team playoff, because there's going to be so many SEC teams that have really tough schedules compared to a team in the Pac-12. We'll have to see how the conference realignment shakes out. But it's just going to be so lopsided for the SEC. They're going to want to get 2 or 3-loss teams in, even with an 8-team playoff. You expand it to 12, I see less SEC dominance, and I see only maybe 3 or 4 SEC teams getting in. More games, more money. This also pertains to the 8-team playoff, but there's a bigger incentive for ESPN, obviously, to push for the 12 for the 12-team playoff. More money involved, bigger games. Colleges can host games on their campus. A lot of neat things with the 12-team playoff that I really like. Another thing, less opt-outs, question marks. I think that should actually say less opt-outs, period. Because, you go to an 8-team, there definitely will be less opt-outs. But the 12-team, I mean, all the New Year's 6 games are going to be really meaningful. You're not going to be seeing these opt-outs we're seeing, in a Rose Bowl. If it's not part of the playoff, if the Rose Bowl isn't part of the playoff, it's a meaningless game to some of these kids, and if they're a top draft pick, they're going to opt out. If it's a 12-team playoff, you're going to see a lot less opt-outs, especially with the big-time New Year's 6 games. They're all going to be very important, obviously, when it pertains to the national championship, so we're going to see less, players who may be top picks opting out because their teams have a chance to win the national title. One other thing that I like with this is the small schools, more chances. So, smaller schools, maybe a school in the American, maybe, the new Big 12. We'll have to see what happens with that, what teams they're able to add, or if they're able to keep it together. They're going to obviously have a chance. A 12-team playoff, that's a lot of teams. Even if you take 3 or 4 from the SEC, you take 2 from the Big 10, 1 from the Pac-12. There's going to be a lot of variety there with the 12-team playoff. I think it would be cool for a smaller school, maybe a group of 5 school, to be an 11 or 12 seed in the playoff. I think that would be really cool. Personally, every year in and year out, you're going to give the smaller teams a lot more of a chance with the 12-team. They'd still have a chance with the 8-team playoff, but a lot more of a chance with that 12-team playoff. Guys, personally, I think an expansion should be happening, and I think it should be happening straight to the 12-team. I think we should go straight to the 12-team playoff when Oklahoma and Texas join the SEC. You may be wondering, why not just stay at 4 teams? I explained this earlier, but the major issue is the SEC becomes such a power conference. You're going to have 2 or 3 lost SEC teams, like let's say Alabama loses to Georgia and Oklahoma, and then you got a 1-loss Ohio State Big 10 team, but they have a way worse schedule. It's tough to cram 4 teams in. You go to the 8 teams, you're able to get them all in. You go to the 12 team, you're really able to get them all in. My main concern with the 8-team playoff is the SEC dominance, to where the SEC could take up 4 of those 8 spots, and if it expands to a 12-team, I don't think the SEC is going to get 6 or 7 spots, obviously, because the teams are going to be beating each other. I still think it'd be 3 or 4 spots to where the dominance wouldn't be a major factor. My prediction is, I think we might go to an 8-team playoff maybe for 2 years and then go to the 12-team. This could happen probably by 2023, whenever Oklahoma and Texas join the SEC, which I believe is 2023 or 2024, worst case or last case scenario, 2025, when they're completely out of their contracts, their TV contracts with the Big 12. They might decide to buy it out earlier. Now, this is just a mock of what a 2021 12-team playoff would look like, just to get you kind of used to more teams into it. So you have the first 4 teams all with byes. That would be Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Oklahoma. And then you've got a zesty 8-9 matchup there, North Carolina and Cincy. Georgia and LSU, I don't think they would have SEC teams facing each other. They'd probably seed them differently. Iowa State, A&M, Notre Dame, and Wisconsin, winner of that would play Ohio State. You can kind of see how a 12-teamer would set up with the first 4 teams getting byes. Obviously, it'd be very important to get one of those first 4 seeds. Nonetheless, most important thing, get in the 12-team bracket and see what happens. But guys, big news for college football with the conference realignment. We're going to see what the Big 12 does. We're going to see what the Big 10 does. I'm really interested in that move. The Big 10 really needs to add 2 or 3 good teams here. Hopefully Notre Dame, but I don't think it's happening. I think Notre Dame's going to the ACC. But guys, my personal take, Texas, Oklahoma go to the SEC. It makes that conference so powerful. We obviously are forced to expand the playoff. And I would say go to the 12 teams. Personally, people may say that's too many, whatever. It does ruin a level of exclusiveness to the playoff. But at the end of the day, we need to be evolving, college football. And it still gives the first 4 teams complete byes. So you're one of the first 4 teams. You get a bye through round 1. You only get 1 extra game. I think the 12-team playoff on scale is the best thing for college football, especially if we get into these super conferences where all these teams are going to have good schedules, especially teams in the SEC. I mean, if you're in the SEC, you could face Oklahoma, Georgia, Alabama in one schedule, and you lose all those games close. You're going to want to be in the playoff, even as a 10 or 11 seed, even with 3 losses. That's why we need to go to the 12-team playoff. The 8-team playoff, it wouldn't be terrible, but I think you could see a level of SEC dominance that where 3 or 4 out of the 8 teams could be from the SEC. That would cause an issue. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.